Shalom Aleichem. We are in Mishneh Torah, the Rabbeinu Gadol Rambam, the end of Perek Aleph, Halacha Tet Zayin or Yud Gimel, depending on your edition. And I'm now sharing the screen with you. Rambam says, Isha shelamedat Torah, a woman who studies Torah, yesh la sachar, she receives reward for doing so. Aval eno kischar ha'ish, but it is not the same sachar as when a man studies Torah. Why? Mipane shelo nistawath. In other words, she is not commanded, she is not required to do so. And the general rule is, as Rambam states here, V'chol ha'oseh davar she'eno l'soweh alo, en secharo kischar ha'm'soweh she'asa, ela pahuth mimenu. So, Chazal said, Gadol ha'm'soweh wa'oseh, mimisha enot m'soweh wa'oseh, which is the opposite of what many people would assume, that a person who voluntarily does something but is not required to do so is more praiseworthy on a higher level than someone who is required to do so. But this is not the case, say Chazal. There are many explanations for this, and we won't go into an in-depth discussion of this concept right now. I will just mention briefly what the Maharal writes in a few places. Rabbeinu Gadol Marami Prague explains that the mitzvot are an expression of what that person is required and what that person is designed to produce and to bring into being in this world. He who is mitzuah, he who is commanded to do something and does not do so, is squandering the special powers and abilities and talents and is not performing the task for which he was designed. He who goes beyond the call of duty is praiseworthy, but it is more praiseworthy when something which is designed for a particular purpose is in fact used and properly channeled in this world, and then the world functions correctly and properly. Rambam continues. Even though it is true, as we said, that a woman who studies Torah receives reward for so doing, Sivu Hachamim shelo yelamed adam et bito Torah. The Hachamim instructed us that a person should not teach his daughter Torah, and lichora, this is referring to a young child, a daughter, who is very young in age, similar to what we saw at the beginning of this perek. At the beginning of this perek we read, and here you can see it in front of you, Noshim v'avadim p'torim mitamud Torah, they are exempt from Talmud Torah, aval katan, but a small young boy, Aviu hayav lelamedo Torah. His father is required to teach him Torah. So we're referring to the chovah of the father to teach his son. And the next statement, Rambam says, "Kashem she'adam hayav lelamed et beno, kachu hayav lelamed et ben beno." So we're talking about the chovah to teach Torah. This Torah refers to sons and not daughters. And the Chorah, we're talking about the same kind of son mentioned at the beginning of the Perek. After all, from a certain point onwards, a person is responsible for his own Torah study. Beyond a certain age, perhaps it's not even possible for the father to teach his son. It might be the case that he doesn't even know as much as his son, first of all. His son may have surpassed him in understanding of Torah and wisdom and knowledge. Second of all, it could be that there isn't the right rapport between the father and son to study Torah when the son is older. So the chovah to teach Torah, in the first place, refers to teaching a young child, as Rambam says at the beginning of the Perek. Aval katan aviu hayav lelamedo Torah. So lichora, what we're referring to here in this halakha at the end of the Perek is speaking of a similar case, speaking about a young daughter. And with regards to such a daughter, the Chachamim said, do not teach her Torah. Mipnei sherov hanoshim en da'atan mechuvanet leitlamed. Most women, says Rambam, are not of the right frame of mind, and are not so, excuse me, are not so, their makeup is not such that they will, in a natural and healthy way, connect to what the Torah is saying. As we'll see in a moment, there are further qualifications with regards to this statement. And thus, Torah will be misunderstood. Excuse me. I would say, in addition, that there are other types of people, other categories of people who should not be taught Torah today, because when a person approaches Torah with a completely incorrect approach and a set of assumptions, the same result that Rambam mentions here, the Torah will be misinterpreted and misunderstood. And as we know, knowledge is power, but power can be misused. This is all based on the statement in the Mishneh that Rabbi Eliezer states, and we find no one who disagrees with Rabbi Eliezer. So this is the halakha that kol ha'amelamed bitot Torah melamedat tifluth. The word tifluth with a toe is like the word shifluth, and Rambam explains the term here that the Torah will be misunderstood and misconceived. שמוציאים דברי תורה לדברי הווי, לפי עניות דעתם. And therefore, there are other kinds of people also who will likely do the same. And Chazal did state that one should not teach Torah to a Talmud, to a student, she'eno harun, literally who is not proper or not, seems not to be the right kind of person who is coming to study Torah for the right reasons and who will be able to understand Torah properly. In that case, one should not teach that person Torah. In other words, Torah is not something that you simply present before all and sundry and hope for the best. That's not the case. A person has to also consider the audience. Rambam continues. This is the Halacha Yud Zayin here, the end of the Perek. Amaru Hachamim, and here Rambam quotes the Mishneh, the end of Sotah. Amaru Hachamim, Kol HaMelamed et Bito Torah, Ki'ilu Limeda Tifluth. And there Rambam explains in his Pirush on the Mishnah, Tifluth Hashal with Divrei HaHevel. In other words, literally frivolous and empty things. Rambam continues, Bameh Devarim Amorim, with regards to what is this statement being made? B'Torah Ba'al Peh. This is true with regards to Torah Ba'al Peh. Aval Torah Bichtav lo yelamed otah lechatchila. With regards to Torah Bichtav, all the 24 books of the Tanakh, lo yelamed otah lechatchila. A person is not required and should not make necessarily the effort to teach all of the Tanakh either. But if he did so, there the hashash is much less or even non-existent. We see in many cases that there is a big difference between teaching Torah Bichtav and teaching Torah Ba'al Peh. We have, if we look for a moment, I will call up another place in the Rambam briefly. Here we have before us Hilchot Melachim u'Milchamot Perek Yod. And Rambam writes here in Halacha Yod Aleph or Halacha Teth, Goy she'asak b'Torah hayav mitah. A non-Jew who studies Torah, that's lichora what it says, she'asak b'Torah hayav mitah. First of all, we should state that Rambam himself explains that hayav mitah does not mean he is executed. It means that he is told off sternly and told that he would be worthy of being put to death. It doesn't say neherach. The lashon of the statement of the Chachamim is exactly as it appears here. Go in Masechet Sanhedrin Daf Nun He. Goy she'asak b'Torah hayav mitah. It says. It doesn't say neherach. So Rambam says a non-Jew is neherach. He is executed only for transgressing the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. But this is a powerful admonition and stricture that a non-Jew not study Torah. Lo ya'asok ela b'sheva mitzvot shelahem bilevad. What he should do is be familiar with and fully understand the Sheva Mitzvot and all their ramifications. Similarly, in this halacha we find Rambam states here, v'chen goy sheshavath, a non-Jew who keeps Shabbat as a Jew is required to do, afilu b'yom yemot ha'chol, doesn't matter which day of the week he chooses to do this, any day of the week. Im asa otho la'asmo kamo Shabbat. If he decided to, he's either in the process of developing some kind of new religion, or or he's trying to experience perhaps what a Jew experiences on Shabbat. If he keeps Shabbat the way that a Jew is hayav to keep Shabbat, hayav mitha, again, he is hayav mitha, but he's not put to death, as we explained a moment ago, with regards to the previous statement. These two statements appear together in the Talmud in Sanhedrin. And of course, this applies as well to a situation where this Gentile invents for himself some kind of holy day or some special festival or something like that. That is not for the Gentile world. Now we have to add a few statements here, a few words of explanation. Rambam himself writes in a Teshuvah, in a halachic responsum, that this statement, Goy she'asak b'Torah, and that it's asur to teach Torah, therefore, to a non-Jew, does not apply to the Tanakh. It applies to Torah she'ba'al peh. Rambam writes that he does, however, say that he does qualify that statement. He says you cannot teach Tanakh to a Muslim, for example, because they do not accept the Tanakh. They claim that Tanakh is a forgery, and therefore the outcome cannot be positive. However, a Christian, Rambam says, who does accept the Tanakh and admits this is the word of Hashem, the word of God, but misinterprets and misunderstands various things in the Tanakh, it is possible that by explaining the correct meaning and import of the Pesukim, of the various statements, the various statements that this non-Jew will come across in the Tanakh, it might be the case that he will come around, he will understand the error of his ways, and then he might become either a ben Noach kasher, a proper Noahide, or he may also choose to convert. So this is what Rambam says himself in the Teshuvah. That's one clarification that needs to be made. Second of all, Goy she'asak b'Torah. The correct perush, as I understand it, the term asak b'Torah, la'asok b'Torah, refers always to Torah she'ba'al peh. Torah she'ba'al peh is an esek. It's not kri'ah. Kri'ah, by definition, studying Torah shebichtav begins at least simply with kri'ah, by reading. There's a mitzvah to read the words of the Nevi'im, the words of the Torah, the words of the Nevi'im. And we see this throughout Hazal, and we see this also in this perek that we were studying in Hilchot Talmud Torah, perek Aleph, when Rambam said a few halachot ago. Perhaps we'll go back there for a moment. So, for instance, here in Halacha Yod Daled or Yod Beth, Kesav, speaking about the requirement to study Torah and to divide one's study of Torah into three categories. So he says over here, we saw this in the previous Halacha. Here it says in Halacha Yod Aleph or Yod Gimel, Hayav l'shalesh at zman lemidato, shalish b'Torah shebichtav, shalish b'Torah she'ba'al peh, u'shalish yavinu yaskil, etc., etc. So Mikra, Mishneh, Talmud, in simple terms. Rambam here says in this halacha Yod Beth or Yod Daled or Yod Beth, Rambam says if you have 9 hours a day to study Torah, koreh b'shalosh mehem b'Torah shebichtav. He uses the verb nikroth, koreh b'shalosh mehem. you read the Torah shebichtav. No one is suggesting that you should not understand or you should not try to understand, but the first step in studying Torah shebichtav is to read the words, just simply to have those words roll over your tongue and your lips. First of all, to read the words of the Torah or the Nevi'im, the prophets, is the first stage in that mitzvah of understanding Torah shebichtav, of learning Torah shebichtav, even without understanding a great deal. Uvashalosh b'Torah she'ba'al peh. The word la'asok, esek, has to do with Torah she'ba'al peh, because there is essentially no mitzvah to simply read without understanding the words of the Mishneh, shall we say. If you do not understand at all what you're reading, then there is no mitzvah involved. In studying Torah shebichtav, there is a mitzvah, just to read. One should be familiar with the pesukim. So just by reading, you are becoming familiar. You get used to the sound of the words, you get used to the syntax, and if you understand at all some Lashon HaKodesh, some Hebrew, then you will you must pick up something from that reading alone. Then, of course, comes a deeper understanding of the text of the Torah shebichtav. Esek b'Torah she'ba'al peh, la'asok b'Torah, is referring to the first of all, ingesting the words of the Torah she'ba'al peh and processing them and understanding what is being discussed and what is the idea behind it. Knowing the Mishneh ba'al peh and understanding roughly what it's saying, or having some understanding, is the first step. Without any understanding, it seems there's no mitzvah at all. Understanding a little bit is already the first stage, but the real limud, the real esek b'Torah, is to understand the concepts and the general categories. That's the Mishnah, and to understand all the reasons, all the whys and the wherefores, and all the ins and outs, and all the ramifications. That is really Talmud. So when Rambam writes in Hilchot Melachim or Milchamot that a non-Jew should not study, and if he does study Torah, this is referring, it seems quite clearly, to Torah she'ba'al peh, which is something which is specifically given to Am Yisrael, and this is what we understand from the Talmud Bavli. I will call it up here briefly from the Lashon of the Sugya. In the Talmud Bavli, Sanhedrin Daf Non Taif Amud Aleph, at the top here we have Amar Rabbi, the second line. Amar Rabbi Yohanan, Goy, it should say Goy or Nuchri. The censored version is Ovel Kochavim. She'osek b'Torah hayav mitah. Why is that? Shene'emar Torah tzivua lanu Moshe morasha kilat Yaakov. The epistle goes on to state, lanu morasha v'lo lahem. So this statement, as also, this is all what I'm about to say is true also with regards to keeping Shabbat. These mitzvot are to be unique and special in every way, and something that can only happen and occur in the Jewish world. Esek b'Torah, understanding the Torah she'ba'al peh, which is by definition the study of Torah by the Jewish people, whereby the Jewish people understand and internalize the message of the Torah in the general sense, and then are able to implement it in a very detailed, very precise way in the real world, in life. This is what Torah Sheba'al Peh is all about, and this does not belong in the non-Jewish world. The same is true for Shabbat. It is a very special experience, a very unique reality, the reality of the Jewish people keeping Shabbat, or even a Jewish individual keeping Shabbat. And this cannot be shared, and is not to be shared in any way with others. It is also the case, by the way, that if one were to try to teach a non-Jew Torah Sheba'al Peh, almost without fail, one would discover that the person in question will not truly understand, will not truly connect with the Torah Sheba'al Peh. I myself have seen cases. I've known individuals good people, non-Jews who converted, and their intention was good. They intended to become good Jews and live according to the Torah. But that's not always how it works out. In at least one or two cases with which I'm personally familiar, I met once a certain individual who had converted some years before, and I knew this person. He even attended a few shiurim, at least 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden I saw him, and it was obvious to me that he was no longer Torah observant. And we got speaking, and I asked him why, and he basically said that he decided that the Torah Sheba'al Peh is not right, or doesn't sit well with him. He likes the Tanakh, he believes in the Tanakh, but he could not relate to the Torah Sheba'al Peh. That was the long and the short of the conversation. And the truth is that this can also be seen in some cases where women study Torah Sheba'al Peh. There was one very unfortunate case which was in the news here recently, just a few weeks ago. A certain woman, I won't mention names, who made something of a name for herself, going back already some years, as a rabbanith, as a person who studied Talmud and Halacha, and was a poseket halachot, etc., etc. This woman, not long ago, just a few weeks ago, published an article or something that she wrote, the following, and I kid you not, she wrote as follows. She said, until all women who are agunot, who were married and have not received a get for whatever reason, and therefore such a woman is referred to as an aguna because she cannot, literally she's anchored, or that's the word comes from the word oren. Oren is an anchor. In other words, this woman is now in a state of limbo, which is a terrible situation and should not exist. According to Rambam, where a Beth Din determines that the man is chayav to give his wife a get, to give her a bill of divorce, and refuses to do so, he is to be whipped until he says, yes, I want to do it. And Rambam goes on to explain that this is not coercion. A Jew wants to do the right thing, but he also has a yetzer hara sometimes, which prevents him from doing it. And we are simply removing the obstacle. But a Jew, naturally, we assume, wants to do the right thing. This halakha, unfortunately, the Rambam writes, is not implemented in Batei Din, and this is one of the major reasons for the cases of igun, of women not being able to receive a get when they should be able to receive a get. So this is a terrible situation, no question about it. And Rambam will be the first to agree. This particular woman came along and said, until all women who are avunot receive a get, all women should refuse to have marital relations with their husbands. Straight, simple as that. Straightforward, obviously very rational, reasonable position to adopt for a multitude of reasons, which I will not even begin to try and explain. But I think this is a perfect example of what can go wrong when the Torah is learned by people who approach it with a set of foreign ideas and assumptions, and begin to study the Torah Sheba'al Peh, and they can end up using it to weaponize it, essentially, for the entirely wrong, very, very misguided reasons. Again, I stress, I kid you not, this is entirely 100% factually true. This was in the news just recently. Yes, she was roundly attacked by some, but I'm sure there are also others who applauded her. So, returning to our subject here about Goy she'osek b'Torah hayav mitah. So Rambam himself points out that again, because it says hayav mitah, the non-Jew is not to be executed, but he is to be told in no uncertain terms that this aspect of Torah is not for you. Not as long as unless you determine that you wish to convert, in which case we have to begin teaching at least some of the Torah Sheba'al Peh to this person, so they know what it is they might be getting into. So this is the statement we have here in Sanhedrin Non Tet Amud Aleph, at the top of the page here, second line. Rabbi Yochanan, Goy, it should say, she'osek b'Torah hayav mitah. So this lashon of la'asok b'Torah always refers to Torah Sheba'al Peh, wherever we find it. This is also, if you recall what we mentioned on another occasion, Rabbeinu Gadol Amarami Prague explains in his Hakdama to Tiferet, his book Sefer Tiferet Yisrael. He wishes to explain the Nusach of the Ashkenazim b'Virkat Torah, la'asok b'divrei Torah. And it's quite clear from his explanation there also that it's referring to Torah Sheba'al Peh. In other words, essentially that expression, not that if one studies Mikra, one is not hayav to recite Birkat Torah. That is clearly the case. One is required to. But that particular lashon, that usage, that expression, asok b'Torah, has to do with Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is first of all an esek, in the sense that it is a very demanding it is very demanding in terms of one's strength, physical and intellectual. As Chazal say, Torah matisha koho shel adam. The Torah literally weakens a person. In other words, it's very demanding, it's very intense, and in some ways it can be compared to STEM studies in the academic world. In other words, mathematics, physics, etc., engineering. It's not that there are no women in these areas, but it is statistically true that there are relatively very few women in these areas compared to men, and they really get to the top of those fields. The true strength and understanding and intuition of women lies in different areas. On the other hand, Chazal said, for example, that women have bina yathera. Bina yathera is intuitive insights on various things, generally more than men. So women have their strengths, and that is where they should focus their efforts and their understandings, and we see this in all manner of pursuits, academic or literary pursuits. Women are much more likely to be very good writers, poets, artists, but not engineers. That is usually not the case in the vast majority of cases. This is true all over the world. It doesn't matter whether you compare the most paternalistic society to the most the most egalitarian society, supposedly, such as Scandinavian countries. You will still find that 80% of nurses are women, 80% of engineers are men. There are people who would rather not know these facts and feel uncomfortable with them for whatever reason, but that there's no wisdom in being uncomfortable or preferring not to discuss or know about the reality. There's nothing particularly wise about that. It only leads to things which are very regrettable. So I think enough has been said on this point. So let us continue. So I share again with you the screen from the end of Perek Aleph, first chapter of Hilchot Talmud Torah. So Rambam said, Amaru Hachamim, Kol hamelamed et bitot Torah, ki'ilu limedat tifluth. The word Torah is very frequently used to refer specifically or mainly to Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is exactly what we see here, because Rambam takes that statement and says, "B'med devarim amurim b'Torah Sheba'al Peh." This is true. But b'Torah Shebichtav, it is much less true. Lo yelamed otha lechatchila, ve'im limeda eno ki melamda tifluth. In the Torah Shebichtav, there are many aspects, many books, many chapters in the Torah Shebichtav, which a woman could definitely should know, should be aware at least of the ideas and the admonitions, the musar, shall we say, that appears in those pesukim. It is also the case that the Chachamim was speaking about what a father should do. Kol hamelamedet bitot Torah. But what about a case where a woman wishes to study Torah of her own volition? She chooses, or she wishes, or she asks to be taught, or she simply makes it her business to study Torah. Well, that's already something different. If there are truly, and there are, I'm not saying there are not, if there is a woman who is truly drawn to the study of Torah, even Torah Sheba'al Peh, even Halacha, even studying Sugyot with the Tosafot, etc. There are such women. They're not the majority by any means, but there are such people. They will, if they are drawn to that of their own volition, they do not need to be prevented from doing so. And if they're really meant to do that, they will succeed. And if a person sees, whether it's a father or a Rav or a teacher, whatever it is, if a person sees that this woman is of a type of a psychological and mental makeup that she is able and truly desirous of studying Torah and understanding, and it seems that she really is on that track and she's really doing this by herself, it's mutar to teach her and to train her and to help her progress in so doing. Kal v'chomer if it's Torah shebichtav. One other statement has to be made here, one other clarification. In ancient times, as is well known, in all societies, women were not engaged in education in general. Women were not taught. Women frequently did not know how to read, and this was the case throughout the ancient world, and therefore also in the Jewish world. Today, things are obviously very different. So it is more likely that some women will gravitate towards studying Torah and a true desire to understand Torah, on the one hand. On the other hand, it would be untrue to say that all the admonitions, all the warnings, and all the advice of Chazal on these matters are now to be disregarded completely. That's also not true. It remains a fact that in-depth study of Talmud, shall we say, for the vast majority of women is simply unproductive, and sometimes, as we mentioned earlier, that particular case, for example, sometimes downright harmful and detrimental. The basic nature of people, of males or females, has not, and will not change, because that is the way that Hashem created us, all human beings. With regards to the Torah being given to Am Yisrael, that also is indicative of a particular ability and talent on the part of the Jewish people to receive the Torah. The Torah is not given to someone who cannot receive it. That's the basic concept here. You do not, of your own volition, by your own initiative, give the Torah, present the Torah to someone who is not truly capable of receiving and understanding and benefiting from that Torah. The Jewish people receive the Torah, it's their morasha, it's their inheritance, and they have a special talent and ability to hear the words of the Torah, to internalize the teachings of the Torah and of the Chachamim, without which a person does not really enter the world of Torah at all, and fully come to grips with it and understand how it is to be implemented in the real world. And it's also not the case that all men or all Jews are capable of this. That's also not true. So there always has to be this awareness of the power and the unique divine and nature of the Torah and its profundity before it is taught, before it is bandied about. Torah is not something to bandy about. It is something to be taken very, very seriously. We shall stop here for today. Heyu beruchim, hizku, v'yames levavchem, kol hamiyahalim l'Adonai.
Rav, last time there was a question that got cut off.
Yes, yes. Remind me what the question was.
The question was, apart from the Mishneh Torah, do other Sifrei Halacha, like the Shulchan Aruch or the Torah, fall into the category of Torah Sheba'al Peh?
In other words, whether they can be compared to the study of Mishnah. That's what we were discussing. So the Ba'al Tosfot Yom Tov, in his Hakdama to his Be'orim on the Rosh, explains that studying Mishneh Torah is like studying Mishnah. And you're asking, are there other works of Halacha that could also, one could say the same about them? Yes, I think the answer is definitely yes, that is true. You mentioned the Shulchan Aruch. Basically, I think the same can be said about the Shulchan Aruch. I think the same can be said about the Torah. It's true that there is a difference because Rambam's style and language is literally taken from the Mishnah. Very often, the Rambam is quoting the Mishnah or a Baraitha word for word, or almost word for word. By the way, this also is true of the Torah. Sometimes the Torah will quote a statement from the Mishnah or from the Talmud verbatim, and then add some further information. But basically, one is getting a concise rendition of those particular halachot. It's true sometimes in a sefer like the Torah you have a little bit more explanation, a little bit more something which already borders on or is already the beginning of Talmud. But generally it is Piskei Halachot, so it's more like the Mishnah. You could say the same thing about Piskei HaRiaz, for example. Piskei HaRiaz, which is an amazing sefer, which unfortunately is not widely known or learnt. The Riaz was the Neched, the grandson of the Rid, Rabbeinu Yeshaya Ditrani, and his grandson was also Rabbeinu Yeshaya. Rabbeinu Yeshaya Haron is known as. He wrote a book of Halacha, which is a tremendous hibur in Mishnah, the style of the Mishnah, like the Rambam in pure Hebrew. This is what the Riaz did, as opposed to the Rid. His grandfather wrote Piskei HaRid, which is on the one hand like the Rif, quoting directly from the Talmud, but he adds much more explanation than the Rif tends to do. You could even ask the question, by the way, even with regards to the Rif. If you study the Rif, you just read the Rif as it is. Are you studying Mishnah, or is that to be considered Talmud? It's also not very clear. It seems more likely that it should be defined as a kind of Limud Mishnah also, because you have the bare statements without much explanation. If, on the other hand, you study the Hilchot Harif with a perush like the Ran, shall we say, or could also be on Masechet Berachot, Rabbeinu Yonah, or on other Masechtot, other Mefarshim. There, it's probably already like studying Mishnah and Talmud together. You're getting it's not maybe the same experience and the same input as that you're receiving if you were as you were to receive if you study the Talmud mamash with Rashi with the essential mefarshim from the text of the Talmud itself, but you're getting at least a distilled version of that Talmud with some of the background, enough to understand some of the basic reasoning and concepts behind it. This is why the Gra was in favor of studying the Rif and also the Rosh, because if you study the Rosh, you're basically studying the Rif with additions, with extra explanations or other opinions, and there is definitely enough discussion there generally to explain the at least some of the background of those halachot, of those statements. Rav Kook, for example, in Orot HaTorah, suggests, this is basically seems to be based on what one sees in the Gra, that once a person achieves the what Rav Kook refers to there as Surutha de Shma'atata, in other words, the ability to, what in the yeshiva world is called, he knows how to learn. He knows how to learn a daf Gemara. He understands the methodology, understands the reasoning basically, but he hasn't gone through the whole Talmud page after page. Rav Kook says at that point the best program of study, the best curriculum is to study the Hilchot Harif with some of the basic mefarshim, and thus you cover, on the one hand, the essential halachot that you need to know in their original language and style from the Talmud. So it's either the Mishnah, or it's a Baraita, or it's a statement in the Talmud, with at least enough background so that you understand what's being said. And the Ran's Perush is really a mofeth. It's a avodat mofeth, what the Rabbeinu Nissim was able to do in his Perush on the Rif. And you will hear other opinions. The Rif will mention, the Ran will, for example, or Rabbeinu Yonah or the Nimukei Yosef will mention other opinions, and usually also indicate what he himself believes the halacha should be. And by studying the Rif, for example, and the same could be said of the Rosh, and the same could be said of the Reed. We actually have, today our problem is not what to study. The problem is that there is too much to study. The Piskei Harid were lost for many centuries, and then Baruch Hashem were rediscovered. The Piskei Harid on the Talmud is like the Rif or like the Rosh, with his own explanation. Sometimes a different opinion, different understanding, or a different psak from the Rif or from the Rosh, and sometimes the same. And it's an amazing work. And his grandson, the Riaz, wrote something which is like a Rambam, but it's according to the order of the Masechtot. It's according to the order of the Masechet and the Perek. So, it takes Masechet Shabbat, he starts with Perek Aleph, and he goes through all the statements, all the halachot that appear in the Perek Aleph of Masechet Shabbat in plain Hebrew. If you study that, it's like studying Mishneh Torah. It's like studying Mishnah. Even though he gives a bit more background, perhaps, in the Rambam, but not a whole lot more. If you study enough so that you understand the basic workings of the Talmud and the essential explanations of the Talmud on the Mishnah or on the Baraita, that's already Talmud Katan. This is how the Hilchot Harif were referred to for many generations. The Hilchot Harif were referred to as Talmud Katan. It's a brief version of the Talmud, especially when you add some perush to it. It's an excellent basic text to go with. So if the question then becomes, so what should one study? Well, there's no simple answer to that. To some extent, it depends on what a person feels they are truly connecting with, and how a person feels they are progressing. If a person feels that studying Hilchot Harif with a perush, if a person feels that he is making real progress and covering a lot of ground, then he should continue doing so. And the same is true of the Rosh, and the same is true of the Reed, etc. The Tur by itself also is an excellent sefer. You don't get all the details, perhaps, that you will find in the Beth Yosef, which one can, of course, look at, either all of it or some of it. But the sefer itself was designed to be studied to stand alone, as is. and it is very. It's a beautifully written and very well balanced Sefer Torah. Again, it's something perhaps that not enough people are familiar with as the Torah, without all the Perushim, just the Torah. So I hope that answers the question.
Does the do the Hilchot and Sefer Halachot Gedolot fall into the same category as the Rif?
Yes, I think it would be correct to say so. Yes, that was their intention also. The intention of the Hilchot and the Halachot Gedolot was to present to you a Talmud Katan, a small, more digestible, more easily grasped version of the Talmud, without all the various possibilities that the Talmud raises, just giving you the bottom line. The Halachot Gedolot is very telegraphic. It's similar to the style of the Rif. The Rif obviously was familiar with Halachot Gedolot. He often mentions it explicitly, and anymore he does not. He obviously was familiar with Halachot Gedolot. Many statements in the Rif can only be understood if you understand that he is basing himself on what Halachot Gedolot wrote. But it does require some explanation. Halachot Gedolot. It tends to be very telegraphic in style. The Hilchot is a little bit less so. There's more of an attempt to explain the background or the rationale behind many of the statements that the Hilchot quotes. In fact, I've often thought that the Hilchot also is another one of those texts that is unfortunately not well known, not sufficiently studied by many people. It could really be a basic sefer that one studies regularly. Perhaps I think that many people would benefit from that in many ways. But the bottom line is that en adam lomed ela b'makom shelibo hafez. A person can only truly study and learn and succeed both in the place and with the text with which he feels that he makes a real connection. So for one person it might be the Hilchot, another person it might be the Mishneh Torah or the Rambam. Rambam's Mishneh Torah is a unique work on many levels, and one can gain a tremendous amount by studying Mishneh Torah of the Rambam in a regular, systematic way. And there too, it is necessary frequently to have some additional explanation and clarification, which Baruch Hashem today is easier to find than perhaps it was in earlier generations. So we shall end here for today. Hayu Baruchim. Hizku v'yames levavchem kol ha'me'ahalim l'Adonai.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.